guys, and welcome to today's recommendations video wherein I'll be giving you book recs that you're not nerdy enough to understand because they're all niche things that happen in my favorite books ever, kind of as a way to market them to you so you can also go ahead and read them. But if you have read them, we are in our own secret online book club that only we understand references to, and so it's gonna be a perfect one. Let's jump in because I've been waiting so long ever since I got the idea to do it, and it's finally time. So for context, I have all of my favorite books pulled out. Basically, it's kind of going to work in the same way the trend works, and if you haven't already seen it online, it consists of a very niche reference to a very, specific subject, and it kind of goes something, and you're not nerdy enough to understand that. And it kind of goes in the reference to, if you understand it, you're nerdy enough because you have gone through that sort of experience in whatever fandom it's relating to, and we're kind of going to do that in bookish form. So a specific scene that happens in all of these books and whatnot that kind of make it my favorite book. But at the same time, if you're nerdy enough to understand it, we belong in a secret book club together, and if you're not, then you should kind of consider picking up the books just to get to that scene because it's so fun and it's so good. And that's basically today's vlog. So let's start. I have everything pulled out and sorted by genre, and that's what we're doing today. So now we're going to start off strong with my favorite ones ever, romance. The first book I have for you is called The Blonde Identity by Ali Carter, and all I'm going to say is he would put his life in danger, fight all across Europe, do spy stuff, and kind of go alongside you because you have amnesia, and he wants you to be safe, but you are not nerdy enough to understand that. If you haven't read this book, what are you doing? Next one, we have The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. Context, her parents are divorced and they have their own separate lives with their own separate specific partners at this point. So she's a child of divorce, which is why she's kind of abandoned and usually forgotten about. And so the recommendation goes, he would go ahead and get your favorite birthday cake, the one you've wanted ever since you were 6 years old, but your parents forgot about you because he loves you, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. I'm sorry, Nick Stark, everybody, that's all. The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. The rec essentially goes, he would help you book flights because you come from almost a middle class family, so she's traveling on a plane for the very first time, so he would help you book your flights and everything else that comes with it because you don't know how. And he would go ahead and track every single movement of yours just to make sure you got there safe. And then once you return and you start telling him about your experience of it all and how amazingly it went, he would sit down and listen all ears, even though he's a billionaire who's probably gone in a bunch of private jets, just because he would do it for you, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. Liam. We all love Liam. That's all. Second Chance Summer. Now this is about one of the side characters. Do keep in mind that if you want to read this book, it is a heavier book, it is a sadder book, it's not necessarily always happy-go-lucky, but I wanted to include it anyway because one of the things that happens with the side characters in the background, I'm sorry, I had to speak about it. He would take his dog to the pet groomers every single time and get the dog some sort of service or good from that store simply because he loves you and he just wants to spend time with you and he wants to ask you out, but he's too nerdy and doesn't necessarily have the guts to do it, and so he's gonna be a shy one, always coming to the dog store just to see you and kind of bring up random reasons to bring his dog to get you to kind of meet with him and spend some time with him, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. And that's all I'm gonna say. Marriage for One. Now do keep in mind all of these books are in no specific order, they're just aligned by genre, but this is my favorite romance book ever, and so I think I'm gonna give 2 on the basis of this because I can't really narrow it down to one, which is why the first one is, you would have bouquets of roses sent to your shop every single Monday just so you have real flowers to put up in your coffee shop because you don't want to spend the money on the fake ones, but he knows that you like them and so he does it for you, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. And the second one is, he would help you kind of fix up your coffee shop instead of actually hiring help because he has the money to, but he would help you and he would stay up every single late night painting the walls, putting up the bookshelves, doing everything he could to have this shop going for you, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. And all I'm gonna say is, there's a reason this is my favorite romance book ever, coming from a hopeless romantic who's probably read over 500 at this point. And so, Jack Hawthorne, I'm rereading this next year, it's so good, and please pick it up on that one rec basis only because this is the best book on the planet, literally. I love it so much, and I don't know how to explain it, but this is so amazing and incredible that you have to pick it up. Begin Again. she would help you try to substitute your coffee intake with all these other things, because too much coffee is not good for one specific person. And so she would go along with you on this whole journey of kind of trying to limit your coffee intake by kind of substituting with like other things, tea, almost like decaf and all these other methods, just to kind of get you to be on a healthy track. But you're not nerdy enough to understand that. And I know it doesn't sound so great, but when you actually read the book and you actually see how niche this is to like specific scenes, oh god, please, you have to read it. I love this book so much. You deserve each other. This book. He would save a paper straw bracelet that you made him years ago, despite the fact that y'all are not in a good place in terms of your relationship and haven't been for months now. But he would save it in his top drawer and go back to it because he still loves you, and he would do that for you. And he's got all sorts of memories of yours, all the little trinkets kind of piled up, and he saved them and kept them despite the fact that y'all might just break up and end things, because he still loves you. But you're not nerdy enough to understand that. And if you are, please talk to me about it in the comment section. I'm still suffering and struggling. I love this so much. Book Lovers by Emily Henry. He would make jokes about you not getting the hopes of a pig farmer up because you're a city girl in a small town, and if you go out with a pig farmer, you don't necessarily have a future in that small town because you're always going to go back to the city. And so he'd make these specific jokes to kind of throw you off and put you off the small town crowd so you don't break their hearts, but more importantly because he has feelings for you, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. And again, if you haven't read this book, what are you doing? Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. The one I actually want to speak about is later in the book, and it's a huge spoiler, so I'll be giving you one at the very beginning in like the first chapter. He would go ahead and get your car out of a ditch because you crash it into a ditch in this like really dark, sleepy small town when you're getting home from a funeral, and so you're scared for your life. But he comes and free of charge, no extra strings or whatnot, he would still help you and get you out of it, and then not expect anything in return just because he wants you back home safe. But you're not nerdy enough to understand that. And if you are, please let it be so, because this is so good. Abby Jimenez, best author for me out of 2025. Read her books, literally. Next one I have is actually the Chestnut Springs series, so we'll be going through one book at a time, each scene that I really specifically want to speak about, and that's what we're doing. Now I want to say two things of this book again, because this is just so good and I kind of want to convince you to pick it up because it's the first in a series, and as soon as you read this, you'll just have this internal instinct to continue the series, which is why the first thing I'm going to say is he would save the very last buffalo wing for you, and he would just give it to you on a platter and be like, yeah, you can have it, because it's for you from the very beginning, and you're not nerdy enough to understand that. The next one is he would kiss you in front of your ex-boyfriend to make him jealous, because that was an absolute piece of shit, but he'd still do it anyway despite the fact that he is your client, just to kind of help you with things out, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. Next book, this is one of my favorites in the series. It's called Heartless by Elsie. This is also the second one, and this one follows one of the brothers and the best friend from like the first book and whatnot. And so the scene, basically, it needs a little bit of context. The brother that it follows, he is the oldest brother and he's also a single dad, and she kind of comes into like nanny for the kid and whatnot. And so on the basis of that, basically, she would go ahead and push another kid into the swimming pool for having bullied your child, just because she's crazy enough and loves your kid enough to do that, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. And all I'm gonna say is that kind of sounds really insane and not okay, but when you actually read the book, it does make sense. And honestly, I'm Team Villa. Go Villa. What she did was correct, so here we are. Powerless, the third one in the series. He would break you out of your toxic wedding and help you run away right before you have to walk down the aisle, because he still has feelings for you and he doesn't want you to end up in a horrible situation, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. Reckless, this one's gonna get 2 because personally I can't narrow it down again to one specific one. So this one, very first one is when you call him a dog and ask his almost like a trainer guy to ask him to back off, he would bark at you just to kind of make you feel better and whatnot, because you've been going through a lot of shit lately, and because he's still gonna keep pursuing you because he's the golden retriever that he is. But you're not nerdy enough to understand that. And the second one is he would throw his used coffee cup in the car of your ex-husband as your ex-husband is backing out of the driveway and asking him to kind of back off, simply because your ex-husband is trash and his trash belongs with actual trash, and he's kind of trying to save you and almost protect you from this asshole who's coming to ruin your life again, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. There is one more I want to give, but it happens towards the end of the book and it's a huge spoiler. And basically, once you read that scene, your jaw will be on the ground because it's the sweetest thing ever. But if I say it, it'll spoil things. So I'm not going to. Just keep in mind it's something that kind of solves like a lot of trauma she had as a kid, and it's really sweet too. The next one is Hopeless. I think I'll be giving you 2 for this one as well because I can't narrow it down. So the first one goes, he would learn how to hand stitch just so he could fix your ripped stuffed toy from back when you were a kid again, because your family tore it and they threw it out because they don't like you, but he'd still do that because he loves you, number 1. And number 2, he has a lot of trauma because he kind of comes with this like military background and stuff, and there's stuff that happens throughout the series that now he's traumatized, and so she would go ahead and do everything in her power to kind of help you move on from that and almost learn to live with it in a way that isn't a defense mechanism. It's more like coping and helping you through all of the pain, and she would do everything she could to just help you. Even though y'all are nothing at that point, y'all are faking it for the world, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. Okay, so the next one we have is more like a Christmassy, wintry rec. It's called The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year, and the one I really want to give about this, it's one where he like forgets her name and then the reason behind that is revealed. I will not give it because I feel like it's a turning point in the romance, and again it's like a spoiler. The rest of them, they're still niche enough that they aren't like huge spoilers, which is why here we are. The one I will give, it is kind of related but it's not a spoiler. So he would basically sit down in rooms across from you as y'all are doing your writer stuff, and even though he's your rival, he would learn your coffee order because he loves you, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that, and he will remember your coffee order for years to come exactly the way you take it because he's Ethan Wyatt. My roommate is a vampire. This one, it's about a vampire and his roommate who's a human who doesn't know he's a vampire. So going into it, the rec is he would buy you oranges as a housewarming present for having moved into his flat and whatnot, despite the fact that he's charging the most basic bare minimum price for like a high-end place in the best part of town. And he'd do all these amazing things like buying saucepans because you asked for them, and kind of helping you decorate and kind of fix things up the way you want to, being the best landlord ever, considering that you've always had the worst people come in. Just because he's an amazing person, but you are not nerdy enough to understand that. This is the last stack of romance I've got. The first one on the top being The Bodyguard by Katherine Center. Obviously, I was going to include this. Again, the scene that I do want to speak about, I won't, because it counts as a huge spoiler, which is why we'll be speaking about a different scene, because I don't want to spoil. When that moment comes up towards the end of the book and whatnot, it's like a turning point in the romance, which is why we'll speak about something else. So at the beginning, keep in mind she finds out that her boyfriend's been cheating on her with her best friend, and so she's heartbroken, and he's the actor that she's supposed to be becoming the bodyguard for because he's got like his own stalker and stuff. So now that context has been given, the rec kind of goes, he would do everything in his power to piss off your ex-boyfriend because he never deserved you in the first place. And so his real name, his name is Robbie. He'd call him Bobby. He'd do all these annoying things and he'd get you away from that man every chance he got, just because he can't watch you suffer, and he's a good person, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. Nora goes off script. This one you do need a little bit of context going into it, which kind of goes that she is a single mom whose husband kind of walks out on her and the kids because he feels like they're pulling them down and whatnot, and he wants to go live a life in Asia pursuing music and stuff. And so he's gone and she's kind of broken in the sense that she doesn't like miss him, but she kind of regrets what could have been. And so the rec is, it's not about the husband, it's about a different man, but the rec goes, he would bring life back into your life and help you see all the small joys of love again, and he'd teach you to kind of love your own self into healing, but then he would also sacrifice everything he's ever got just so you'll be happy. But you're not nerdy enough to understand Leo Vance, which is why here we are. People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. There is no world in which I would not include every single Emily Henry book I've ever read into this recommendations video, which is why here we are. In this one specifically, he would cancel a trip going out of country, fully paid for, no expenses, just because you're at home sick, so he can come move little cities to stay with you and help you and look after you, because he is in love with you and he's also your best friend, and he would literally move heaven and earth to make it one for you, but you're not nerdy enough to understand. Alex. Beach Read by Emily Henry. He would say that when he watches you sleep, he feels overwhelmed that you exist, but you're not nerdy enough to understand Gus. That is all. This is also, I think it's tied with Marriage for One for my top spot for like the best romance book I've ever read. So if you haven't picked it up yet, take this as your sign. This is the most incredible book ever, and here we are, literally here we are. Next one is a series. It's The Summer I Turned Pretty, but if I give you specific recs pertaining to each book, it's gonna spoil the entire series for you, which is why we'll speak only in this like overall gist about the entire thing. And so the rec is, she would go to the beach house every single year along with her mom and her brother and meet you and your brother, and she'd kind of be there with you as your best friend throughout it all, but secretly she'll pine for you in her heart because you're the only boy who's ever had it anyway. It's only ever belonged to you, and so she'll pine for you, watching you fall for other people, making her own romantic mistakes, but she'll only always ever be yours, and you just don't know it because you're not nerdy enough. That's it. And so everyone who hates The Summer I Turned Pretty, you're not welcome here. I'm so sorry, please leave, because there is no world in which that is an opinion that counts. I'm so sorry. And so here we are. Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. This also needs a little bit of context. They have gone on their first date ever and they don't want the night to end. So towards the end of the night, they kind of go to this like escape room and kind of want to hang out over there, kind of figure out the puzzles and solve it. But because it's later in the night and there's only like a teenage kid on shift, the teenager forgets about them and they get locked up in the escape room. And now it's their first date. They weren't supposed to spend so much time together, but now that they are hanging out and waiting to be rescued and taken out because they solved the escape room, they're just stuck in there for the final lock to turn. They're waiting, and so the rec kind of goes, once you're finally rescued from the escape room and the owner brings you out, he, instead of asking for like damages and complaining about the time he had spent in there with you, he would ask the owner to give you one of those rock salt lava lamps that you've always wanted ever since you were a kid, because he listens to what you're saying, and he would get that for you despite everything else, just because honestly he is a 10 out of 10. But you're not nerdy enough to understand that. The Love of My Afterlife. This rec is also kind of similar to Nora Goes Off Script because they both make me feel almost the same way, wherein there's a woman who's almost lost all her love for life and she just doesn't want to necessarily live in the most amazing way through it because it's like a beautiful gift that you get only once, but she's just like squandering it because she's going through the motions. That's the whole point. She doesn't want to like end it or anything. She's just like going through it all, and she could have been much happier than she is, but she's not, and she's just suffering through the motions. And now the rec essentially goes that he would come in and he's your little soulmate and he'll help you almost bring back again the light in your life again, because he knows you deserve so much and you deserve the entire world and so much more. And so he'll do all these random crazy things that you ask him to do, and he'll help you with the craziest of missions and like pull all these like crazy stunts and throw these wild parties just because he wants to see you happy and bring back the joy and the light in your eyes again. But you're not nerdy enough to understand that. And this was not a spoiler. As you read the book, it kind of comes up and you'll understand what I'm speaking about. It's very vague, and so do not worry. One book that I don't have physically so I can show it up to you, but I really wanted to include in this vlog as well, is called The Chemistry of Love. So I'll make sure as I'm editing that it's on the screen for you. But in this, the rec essentially goes, he knows that you're in love with his brother and he knows he cannot do anything about it, but he will still stay up the night and play board games with you all night and kind of hang out with you to give you that company, despite the fact that your heart belongs to another man. But you're not nerdy enough to understand that. Now I have a bunch of fantasy recommendations because my 3 stacks of romance are over. We're starting off strong with A Coat of Thorns and Roses. This one is a very extremely niche rec that you'll understand only if you've read the book. But she would go ahead as a human and sacrifice it all, even though she's a human and she doesn't have magic and whatnot, and go under the mountain for you to save you and save your people and save your lands. But you're not nerdy enough to understand that. And this is not a spoiler, so if anyone's like scared and whatnot, as you read it, it's only then that it'll kind of make sense and kind of click. But then also you need to finish the book for you to be able to understand, which is why do not worry, I'm not ruining this for you. This is like an experience everyone should experience, and I won't spoil it for anyone in no world. I also have the second one in the series because in no world would I not speak about this. This is my favorite ever, and while this one, the rec does make sense, I do not personally stand for this because that person didn't deserve it. This one, however, the rec is, he would go ahead and he would wait 500 years for you, and he would wait longer because you deserve every single one of the years. Only knowing what you look like, he wouldn't know your name, he wouldn't know anything about you. He just knows that he'll wait for you and he'll keep waiting forever because every year that he waits is worth it because you are worth it. But you're not nerdy enough to understand that, and she doesn't even know in the first place. Again, also not a spoiler before anyone comes and yells at me. It makes sense as you read it, and I spoke in the most vague of terms, so don't worry, you can still read it without having to worry about the fact that it's ruined, because it's not. Ninth house. So this one, it's not necessarily romantic, but I still want to say it anyway because nothing has happened between these characters at this point in the series yet, the first book and the second book. She would go to hell and to every one of its circles, and she'll go hunting with all of her powers to kind of hunt and find you back and bring you back to Earth, because she misses you and she just doesn't want you to be in a place where you're so soulless and all alone, and she wants you back. But you're not nerdy enough to understand that. The Book of Doors, now again, I think I'll give 2 for this because I don't know which one to really settle on, but she would go ahead and be sent back into the past because of these magical things that happen, but she will live through every single past year and still come back to fight alongside you for the good of the world, because she is Cassie and she will do anything in her power to stay on the side of the good, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. And the other rec goes, he would come and put his life on the line and defend you and defend the magical artifact in your possession from all these other people who kind of want access to it, but he will defend you and defend all of your friends and whatnot, your roommate, and kind of save you from falling into these people's hands for evil purposes and stuff. And he will keep defending you despite the fact that he's also risking everything he's got in the process, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. And please God, let this become a series because this is so good. And again, nothing's happened between these characters in a romantic sense, but then if it becomes a series, I can always pray and hope as a hopeless romantic, so here we are. Next up, we have the book Shatter Me under fantasy. This is again gonna be the vaguest of references because it actually references something that happens later on in the series and I don't want to spoil it for you, but basically, he would go ahead and love you every single time, no matter what they do to him, no matter how they break his mind and they break his body and they try to wring the memories out of him. He will love you in this lifetime and in every lifetime, and every single time he will fall back in love with you, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. Next up, we have Fourth Wing because I could not include this. You know what I mean? But basically the rec goes, he would lose the entire war, a one that he's had as his singular purpose in life, considering the fact that his parents devoted their own life's work and causes for it, but he would lose the war than lose you because you're that important to him above anything else and beyond, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. That's all I'm gonna say. This one, again, I don't have a physical copy of, so I'll have the photo on screen, but it's called The Unmaking of June Farrow, and it kind of counts under like magical realism and stuff, so kind of like the Book of Doors, but it's part of fantasy anyway because it's got magic. And basically the rec goes, she would go back to the 1950s, she would start a life with you and she'd live there with you because she loves you, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. Now moving on to our thrillers, because I have a few of those stacked up here as well. The first one being Stranger with My Face. Now I read this, I'd say about easily 6-7 odd years ago, so it's been a while and I'm not really sure if my rec is as correct as I think it is, but this is definitely in my favorite books ever list because I keep thinking about it. And so if it's gonna be a little off, please bear with me because it's been again years since I've read this one specifically. But the rec kind of goes, he would do everything in his power to kind of save your life from the evil twin that's come to kind of take it, because this book involves like astral projection and stuff. So the evil twin that's now residing in your body and your soul's been cast out to the ether and whatnot, he will do everything he can, risk his own life and kind of put everything on the line to bring you back and give you your own body back and save you from your life getting taken away, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. Again, you have to read this to understand it, but then it's a little complicated and it makes sense when you actually get to it, and it's so good. Run by Blake Crouch. She would go ahead and again sacrifice and put everything of hers on the line. She would go ahead and be at the brink of death and she'd put her life there just because she wants to save her family and give them a running chance and let them get away. But you're not nerdy enough to understand that. And that was the scene that truly made me lose it. I was crying so hard. If you've read it, you understand. And here we are. First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston. She would go ahead and work as a secret double covered agent. So she would build a whole life with you just to kind of expose all the bad business you've been doing behind closed doors. And she would fake it into making you believe that she is the perfect girlfriend and all. But she's really just doing it because of a spy job. But in the midst of everything, she'll still fall for you. And that's all I'm gonna say. Actually, I don't want to spoil it for you, but she's a girl boss and you're not nerdy enough to understand that. Bad Men. For context, she is a serial killer and she kind of has like a crush on him. She's been stalking him for a little bit and he is this man who runs this like podcast about like crime investigations and stuff. So he basically outs murderers and she does it on like a daily basis because it's like a hobby. So the rec basically goes, she would go ahead and risk her entire identity and everything she's ever done and hidden back in her closet and whatnot, because everyone's got bones in the attic, and she would go ahead and risk it all still just to clear your name because she loves you and you don't know it yet. But she's going to do everything she can to kind of help you evade the cops and the false accusations that are now on your doorstep, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. Now moving on to the last few recs I've got. These are literary fiction, kind of like mixed actually, women's fiction, but then there's like a classic in here. It's mixed basically. So this one falls under literary fiction, but this one goes, she's a librarian and she would go ahead and recommend you a book and make you a felted little, almost like an object to kind of save you and help you bring again light back into your life and kind of fix everything that's been going wrong around you, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. Next up we have a classic. This one again is an obvious one, but he is your business partner back from 10 years in the day, and because he values your friendship still, he will go ahead and send the ghosts of Christmas past, present and future to kind of help you atone for your sins and fix the way you've been, because he doesn't want you to suffer in the afterlife the way he does, but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. And the last one I've got for you today is called Lessons in Chemistry. This one is more like women's fiction and it's set very much in the almost like 1960s, 70s timeline, so do keep in mind that the opinions back then are kind of on the retarded side, which is why the rec basically goes, he would go ahead and be the only male scientist, because she is like a singular female scientist in that facility. She's the only woman there who is actually working at the position she is, and so he as the only male scientist will kind of help you figure out all the problems you've got in your equations and kind of talk business with you and kind of take you seriously in a world where it's been dominated by men and no one actually does, because he loves you but you're not nerdy enough to understand that. And this one again is so good. It doesn't necessarily have a happy ending for them specifically, but then the whole book overall gets it. And so again, be very careful when you're reading this, because when something happens in this, I was sobbing my eyes out, but then also it's like one of the best books ever, so had to be on here. But basically these were all of my recs that I kind of wanted to speak about, wherein if you get it, you get it. If you're nerdy enough, we're nerds together, because these again are such incredible books with such incredible niche things that happen in them, that now I'm hoping that you were able to take away at least a rec or two from this video, because that was the whole purpose of you kind of having to watch this video in the first place, me marketing my favorite books to you so we can all just become part of like a fun book club together. But regardless, now we've reached the end of this Bookmas video. Hopefully you guys had a fun time coming along with me for these recs, because I've been seeing it everywhere for all kinds of things online, which is why I wanted to incorporate it in our own sort of channel somehow, and that's how I'm doing it. But yeah, now that we have reached the end of this video, like, comment, share, subscribe, do the YouTube things, you know how to do them if you had a fun time. And now stay tuned for tomorrow's video, because I'll be seeing you for every day in the month of December for Bookmas, which is why here we are, while we are coming to the end of Bookmas slowly but surely. I'll be seeing you tomorrow anyway because it's still there, and so as it's there, take care, stay safe. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and that's it, because I'll see you tomorrow. And until then, bye.